my friends, my family, a lot of them think, and they're like, oh, what's work? You're just always in the mountains. You're just like enjoying life. This is so great. So every year I plan like 1 or 2 or 3 like trips where I go alone to explore. And I think that time out, that kind of rejuvenates me to be able to come back and do this grind again.
Welcome back to In Sync. I'm your host, Anmol Irfan, and today we have with us Aneeqa Ali, a passionate traveler whose love for exploration has taken her to some of the most remote and breathtaking corners of Pakistan. And yes, just like our last episode, we've brought you back to travel again because it's a topic that we just can't seem to get enough of. In March 2017, Aneeqa chose to leave the corporate path and pursue her passion for travel as a career. This decision led to the founding of the Madhatters, an experiential travel company dedicated to helping adventure seekers discover Pakistan's lesser-known regions and immerse themselves in its vibrant culture. Through the Madhatters, their mission is to share Pakistan's stunning landscapes, unique cultural traditions, diverse crafts and cuisines, and showcase a side of the country that often goes unseen. Aneeqa, we're so excited to have you here with us today, and just introducing you has made me want to travel in Pakistan all over again and hopefully do a tour with the Mad Hatters.
Hi, Noel. Nice to meet you again. And it's wonderful to be on this platform with you. And travel is something that is kind of like, such a small part of Pakistan, although it should be much bigger and much more highlighted. But unfortunately, it does not really get that sort of recognition. So it's great that, you chose this topic to have this conversation, and I'm really looking forward to discuss some of the challenges, some of the good things, some of the bad things that I've got to experience through working in tourism for the past 8 years in Pakistan. Even before that, I had a love for traveling, and I traveled all around the country, which kind of led me to think of starting something in tourism, and it drove me to come up with a company that helped people to experience, to explore parts of Pakistan that were, that are not really that easily explored by other people.
I love that aim, and I think right off the bat, I'm sure our listeners can tell that you have a very strong sense of purpose with your company, and of course, your work seems very exciting. But in terms of your personal experience, what is it that really gets you out of bed in the morning?
So I think getting out of bed in the morning, I would call myself a night owl. So I'm actually more productive at night compared to the day. But I have actually a bit of a trouble waking up early in the morning. Since the past few years, I've been trying to have a routine to get up in the morning. But I think this is also one thing I've realized, that whenever I'm traveling, it just feels so natural to align myself with the natural rhythm, and I feel more energized, more productive, and I wake up with a new purpose, with a new mission in my head whenever I'm traveling. So I feel more at home, or like more in sync with my body, even when I'm traveling. When I'm not traveling, or like I'm at home, I do have that sense of purpose that I have to do my desk job, because after a certain point, when you're running a business, even if it's a travel business, there's a lot of back end work that goes on. So it's not just like you're always on the go and you're always traveling. You're also sitting at home on your computer most of the time, working on spreadsheets and dealing with clients and emails and all of that. So there's a lot of that goes on behind the scenes. But the part that still gets me up in the morning and keeps me motivated to do this is when I'm actually traveling and I'm with people, or I'm traveling alone myself. So I think that is eventually what I work towards.
Yeah, you know what the funny thing is? I think most of our guests up till now have all been night owls. And this is how I start the podcast with all of our guests. And it's been really interesting because their first response is, we really struggle to get out of bed in the morning.
Yeah, I think coffee is my savior. I just like doze up on coffee in the morning to be able to work. But when I just thought that, what am I gonna say when you ask me that, what wakes you up in the morning? I have a lot of trouble doing that.
No, but it just goes to show, right? Since InSync is so focused on intentional living, that you can still be productive and have a purpose without doing the 9 to 5 grind. There's no time that works for everyone. And I think that's just one thing that I wanted to point out after listening to your answer. But another thing that really stood out to me is when you said, there's a lot of desk job aspects as well to your travel experience. And I think that thought that was really interesting, because what we're seeing on the Madhatters and what you're sharing is, of course, all these really cool travel and trips and everything. And I'm sure there's so many more physical and mental challenges that viewers like us don't get to see. So I think what I'd really love to know is, how do you balance your own well-being in a job like that and balancing all those aspects?
Yeah, I think when people like think of a travel company or think of a job related to tourism, they always think that you're always going to be on the move. You'd be traveling to very beautiful destinations and having fun all the time. That's what my friends, my family, a lot of them think, and they're like, oh, what's work? You're just always in the mountains. You're just like enjoying life. This is so great. I would, this is so like most of them don't even consider this as like work or job. They think that I'm just partying all the time, which is not the case, because even when you're traveling and you're with a group of people, when you're working in tourism, you're not really there to have fun yourself. You're there to make sure that all the people who are traveling with you, they're having a great time. So it's you rightly pointed out that it's a very mentally and physically exhausting job. And you're because like when you're doing a 9 to 5 job, you go to work in the morning and you come back in the evening, and even if somebody emails you after that like 5 p.m., you're like, why is this person emailing me right now, and I am not supposed to answer this email. I'll just do that when I go back to work tomorrow morning. But when you're working in tourism, you're literally on duty 24/7. You're waking up at 3 in the morning to check that if the person who was supposed to arrive at the airport, has he made it, has the driver picked him up, or when there is a landslide, your flight has been cancelled at 5 in the morning, and you're just trying to figure out how to get another transport, how to figure out another logistic, or like get another hotel booking. So there's a lot of that goes behind the scenes, and especially in a country like Pakistan that has so many infrastructural challenges, you are literally firefighting all the time, which does not really make it to social media, or does not really make it. That's why people think that it's always fun and butterflies and everything, but there's a lot of that goes behind the scenes to make sure that it seems that way. Even a lot of travelers who come with us, they don't really realize the kind of work that goes on and the kind of challenges that we have to face to make sure that it's a seamless experience for them. Because a lot of these people, I mostly work with people who are coming to Pakistan from other parts of the world. So for them to even, like, most of them are not really attuned to or know about the challenges that exist over here in terms of infrastructure, in terms of challenges, in terms of culture, in terms of connectivity. So these are the things that sometimes, like, we do give them a write-up before the tour, and they have received guidelines, but a lot of them, sometimes they don't read anything, and they come here clueless, not knowing what to expect. So I think and other than that, it's physically exhausting in ways that you're traveling, you're mentally dealing with all of these logistical issues, while also making sure that you're there with the people who are on the tour, keeping them engaged, keeping them busy, hiking with them. So it's just a lot. But I think what, like, kind of the way to go about is that because it's a seasonal job, so there are months when I have like tours running back to back. I have like 6, 7, 8 tours running at the same time. That is kind of like the most stressful time for me in a year. So I think that would be around like March and April, which is spring season, and then September and October, which is the fall season. So the bulk of my tours actually happen during these 4-5 months. And the rest of the year, I just like spend that in planning and organizing, and I go on my own solo tours also, which kind of, because when you're traveling with a group and like leading a group, that does not really serve your own travel bug. So every year I plan like 1 or 2 or 3 like trips where I go alone to explore, and I think that time out, that kind of rejuvenates me to be able to come back and do this grind again.
I think it's so great to hear that you really carved that time out for yourself. I think so many people, and especially women, I think in Pakistan, really forget to do that and forget to, like you said, rejuvenate themselves, fill their own cup. So I love to hear that you're doing that. and I think you deserve it, with how challenging it is, like you said, to be responsible for other people, especially people who don't know anything about the local culture. But also, I know from viewing your work that the Mad Hatters is very big on making sure that whatever you're doing is ethical and sustainable towards local cultures and communities. So that must be a sense of responsibility as well, right? That also must be a challenge, balancing that line between giving your clients a tourism experience versus making sure that you are acting ethically towards the local communities that you're touring.
Yes, I absolutely agree with that. Not just in terms of like how it affects the local communities, but also how climate change is such a huge problem. And Pakistan is one of the worst affected countries because of climate change. And tourism is something that directly leads to it. Like if we're cutting down trees and building new hotels, building new roads, eventually, there's so many glacier outbursts every year, so many landslides, flooding that affects all parts of Pakistan. And tourism is, I think, one of the main causes. I would not say main causes. There are a lot of other things, industries, cars, and everything. But I think tourism also leads to it. And I think Pakistan is a country that is not really meant for mass tourism. We kind of make sure to not that our reality. That's why most of our tours that we do, our maximum group size is 12. Sometimes we have 13 or 14 on some certain groups, but I think that's the cap that we have on all of the groups. We have very small groups of people, and we do limited number of tours every year. We don't have a tour going out every Friday. Like you'd see a lot of companies in the market that are offering the same itinerary over and over again, and they'd be having like 4 or 5 groups going out every week. But we don't really want to do that. We want to kind of show the side of Pakistan and make it an experiential experience. So it's very immersive for the people who come here, to be able to go to people's homes, to be able to cook with them, to eat with them. And it's not possible to do that with a bus full of 20 or 40 people. You can't even accommodate that many people in someone's home. So I think making sure that you spread out, I think another problem in Pakistan is that only a few destinations actually would get promoted, and when they get popular, every person would want to go to that one destination, which is why they become so overcrowded. And the benefits of tourism, they're not really spread evenly across the region. For example, there's so many other places that you can go to that you would not go to just because you want to go to the most popular place and take selfies in front of forts and borders and everything. So I think that is the sort of tourism that I don't want to promote, or that does not even align with me personally. And I want to do things that I enjoy doing. And the kind of experiences, the kind of tours that I started offering in the beginning were actually the kind of experiences that I enjoyed myself, and I wanted to share those with the world. And luckily enough, I think I was able to find my crowd and the niche where people were interested in having those sort of experiences. But I think sometimes there is a mismatch also. And then that is a huge struggle, because like if you want to take people to a remote place and want them to immerse themselves in nature and have a local experience in someone's home, and but people, they want to be close to the market and go shopping all the time, then they can be that sort of mismatch. So I think I would say that I was fortunate enough, or I worked towards having the kind of niche that I wanted to work with, so they enjoyed the kind of experiences that I was offering. But I think in the beginning that was a bit of a struggle to get to where I am now. Now I can just like pick and choose. I get so many queries on like social media, on email, that I say no to, because I feel like that is not the kind of service that I want to offer, or I would not really enjoy offering that kind of experience. And there's so many other people in the market who are offering that, so I don't want to be just another person who's doing that. And I also want to be mindful of the things that I do. And like there's so many female tour leaders that I work with me. Other than being ethically responsible for the local communities, I also want to make sure that tourism is an industry where you do not really see that many women, be it a hotel, transport company, waiters, tour guides, everything. So I think it's just a world of men. And one of my core aims was to be able to engage more women in this. And now I have like so many female leaders, local tour guides, female tour leaders from the cities who go on tours. And the majority of my team, I just have like one male guide, I think one or two. The rest of my team it's all women, and they've been working with me for the past like 2-3 years, and even their families are supportive of it now. In the beginning, I had to travel to really remote areas of Pakistan, visit families. So I actually got in touch with these women through my personal connections. When I was working with a male guide, I would ask him that, can you connect me with your cousin or a sister or somebody who would be interested in working in tourism? And eventually that's how I got connected with most of them. So I think other than being ethically responsible for the kind of people I'm bringing there, it's also that, because these people have trusted me, that, they want to be, because in some cases their families were not okay with women working in tourism, and eventually when they saw the kind of work that I was doing, the kind of tourists that were coming with me, they got comfortable with this idea. And now initially it was just like, when maybe they would join me for one day tour, and then that changed to overnight tours also. So now the families are also okay if they do overnight tours with me, and it has taken quite some time to build that rapport and build that trust. So I think it really, that's why the kind of work that I do, I want to be mindful that I don't break that trust of the people who have trusted me with this.
I think that's so important, supporting local communities and particularly women, because like you said, I think you're right. Anytime that I've traveled up north, or to be fair, I am still one of those people that despite my best intentions, I've only traveled to the super touristy areas till now. But definitely, like we barely see any women, and I know that local communities have concerns about the number of tourists coming in, and the fact that they no longer feel comfortable. I've heard with their women being out in public because there's so many tourists and they don't really know how to act or be with local communities, which is why I think the work that you're doing is so important in terms of really immersing yourself in the culture and interacting with locals, understanding how they're living. But in terms of bringing women to this industry in particular, on both ends, I know there's some stigmas in our society still about women traveling alone and, like you said, working in the tourism industry. What's your experience been on facilitating women on both ends of the spectrum? Does that come with its own challenges?
Challenges, like I pointed out, that initially it was difficult to be able to convince families that it would be okay for women to be with tourists. And I think over time, eventually they just want to make sure that their daughters are safe and they are respected, which happens in most of the cases when the tourists are not respectful of the local culture, respectful of women. For example, like Kailash is one area where the kind of tourism that gets promoted there is festival tourism, and every year on those festivals there would be huge crowds of people who would just go there at the time of festivals. They would take pictures of women without their consent. They would post them on social media with just like really weird captions. And so I think there's a lot of clash that goes on between the local communities and tourists now, because they feel like the tourists are not really doing justice and they're being disrespectful to themselves. They intrude their homes, their families, their lives. So I think that's why it's important to first be accepted in that community, to be able to gain that trust from that home, and then engage the people with you. And I think eventually it's just the kind of work that you do over and over again that gives them that confidence in you. And eventually I think it's also the financial independence that you get from it, because some of the tour leaders, female tour leaders from Hunza, from Skardu, who are working with me now, they're supporting their families. They're also not only paying their own fee, but also covering the fee of their siblings and supporting financially their families. So I think that is a liberating feeling, and eventually that is kind of what motivates them, because in these areas there are not really enough jobs. The only jobs that are there, the industries that are there, are agriculture and tourism. And if we are not including women in tourism, then they're not really left with any other option to work in. So that's why I think having this opportunity and having that option, that there is a responsible or ethical way of working in this space also, and not every tourist is going to be disrespectful. There are some people who are mindful of the things that they do and how they behave with you. And so that's why I think I'm very conscious about working with a small niche. I don't want to mass market my tours. I don't want to work with masses. And this is the reason I say no to so many opportunities, because I feel like there's going to be a mismatch of the kind of values or the kind of experiences that I want to offer them. And maybe they're not even going to enjoy that. So there's no point of doing that anyway. So I think for the women only tours also that I lead, I feel like there is a very strong bond of connection. Like even on the other tours, you get that kind of experience, because if you're together for like 15, 20 days, most of my tours are like longer tours. I do like slow paced traveling. I don't really like to go from one place to another in 1 or 2 days and just like, sitting in the van most of the time, not really getting to experience anything. So that's why most of the tours I do, they're like minimum, I think, 10, 15 days. I don't really do tours that are shorter than that. And some of them even go on for like 1 month, 1.5 months, 20 days. So when you're like together for that long, you eventually end up getting to know each other very well, especially because they're also in small groups. So, but specifically for the women tours, I feel like there is a very deeper connection, and because most of the women who join, they're quite like-minded, and that bond of sisterhood, the bond of deep connections that you build on those tours, that I think they're like lifelong friendships that you will build on those tours. So I definitely think challenges definitely are there, but I would say there are more opportunities, because when it's just a group of women, it opens more doors to you. For example, maybe there is an area of Pakistan where the women of the house would not be comfortable having men come into the kitchen, but they would be very comfortable and open and sharing their stories when it's just a group of women. So I feel like it opens much more opportunities because it's just a group of women. I think challenges are much smaller compared to the opportunities that you get.
I think that's so interesting to hear, because in most cases we're always told that, oh, women's only groups and women's mobility is more challenging. So I think it's really cool to hear that it can open some doors as well. And I'm sure that there's also a lot of learning, especially for women who don't have or don't have access to that kind of mobility elsewhere, maybe, or have not traveled in that way before. What do you think that travel can perhaps teach us more about ourselves, about the people that we're with? For example, in this case, the sisterhood, the community that you're forming in a healthier way. Do you think it can get us more in touch with our inner selves?
Definitely. I think travel just like opens your mind in so many ways, because you're just like living in a small box. If you don't travel, if you don't meet people, you feel like, your whole reality is just like, whatever you experience in life. And fine, like reading books and podcasts and seasons and everything, that can open up your horizons. But I think being out there and experiencing it yourself and witnessing it yourself, that's like a completely different reality. And not just like, you don't just learn from these local communities, but you also learn from the nature. And I think being surrounded by such huge mountains, by rivers, it's just a very humbling experience. It teaches you humility, that you're just like such a tiny dot in this whole existence of universe, especially when you can see the stars and when there is no noise pollution and you can see the Milky Way. You feel like, there's such a huge universe out there, and we're such a tiny dot. And then your like problems and the stresses and everything, it seems so small, and you feel like, why are you wasting your time worrying about these things that don't even exist, and like it's such beautiful out there. So I think nature in itself, it's very healing. People who have mental health issues, who have trouble sleeping, like I have trouble sleeping, I think I have insomnia. So when I'm at home, I have, like I mentioned, I'm a night owl. And one of the reasons is that, I feel like I suffer from a little bit of insomnia and I can't sleep on regular hours. But when I'm in the nature, my body clock, it just like syncs with nature very naturally. So I think being outdoors, hiking, being surrounded by trees, rivers, mountains, it's just like a very humbling experience in itself. And then meeting these people who are living such a different life than your own, that kind of makes you realize that there is so much that is happening around in the world. And Like, you learn so many, for example, like the way they eat, their lifestyle, you can incorporate that some of that, because we eat so much junk in the cities, and incorporate that into our lifestyle. But when you go there, you learn that, in an organic way of life, you learn so much from them. So I think it's just the sky's the limit. There is so much that you can learn from this.
Honestly, just listening to you makes me want to close all of this right now and just get on a flight and be somewhere in nature.
Yes, I think.
Yeah.
I feel like that all the time.
So anyone who knows me, if I am gone somewhere tomorrow and off the grid, it's all because of Aneeqa.
Okay, I take full credit for this.
So I'm sure that you must have had so many beautiful, awe-inspiring moments. Is there a particular moment or a particular trip that's really been your favorite?
I would say that, a particular trip, like there's so many trips that I love, and like I love the groups and everything. But I feel like the one trip that has kind of struck out was, I did a tour for Sikh pilgrims. That was last year. So there was a group of 20 Sikh pilgrims who came from the US, and it was an 11-day itinerary. We didn't really go to the mountains on that tour. We were in the cities, and the focus was on visiting all the Sikh religious worship places, and also like other places of cultural importance, like the forts and mosques and everything. So I think it was a very interesting experience, because it was different than all the others. Tours that I do are mostly focused on the north of Pakistan. I do take some tours to the south also in winters, but like the majority of my tours go to the north. So this was a completely different itinerary. We had interactions with the local Sikh communities. We learned about the struggles that they're having in Pakistan. And there's so many places that I did not know about before that tour that existed, even like working on that itinerary, doing research about it. So it was just like learning something new. And also the kind of religious harmony that it brought together. The people who came here, they were like so much touched. Like some of them eventually they cried on the last day, because they were so touched by the kind of hospitality they received in Pakistan. They were not expecting that, because I think that is something they were told, that the people here, they're not really gonna welcome you, so it's gonna be a problem to go to this country. But eventually when they came here, they were like, the people were so welcoming, and they were so happy to see us. So there's so many people who cried on the last day of that tour, and it was, I think, very touching experience. It was like a mixed group of like very young people, then very old people. So it was, a pilgrimage tour, then just like a sightseeing tour. So I think that would I say that was I'm not saying that was the only good tour that I've done. I've had like many interesting tours, even in the mountains, some of the women only tours. Like I said, there's a strong connection of sisterhood on those tours. So I feel like some of those tours that I've been on also, they were like very deep, soul touching conversations that happened, that kind of opened your eyes to a lot of new things in life.
I think that's amazing to hear, and I'm sure there's so many people like me listening to this right now who just want to pack their bags and get on the next flight. So just to close off our conversation for today, what would your advice be to any of our listeners who are frantically Googling the Mad Hatters and tours to the north right now?
Yeah, I think it's just like whether with the Mad Hatters or on your own or with somebody else, I think everybody should be traveling. And there is just no question about it. Sometimes, affordability can be an issue, and you feel like, I cannot do this. But there's so many, even with limited budget, there is so much that you can do. Like now, especially if you want to go to the north of Pakistan, instead of booking a proper tour, you can even take a bus to like go to Hunza or Skardu or somewhere, and just be there for some time. So I think whoever is listening, I think this is your sign to just like book that flight or book that bus ticket or just like a tour, and just whatever way, wherever you can travel, I think you should travel. Sometimes, we feel like travel would only be possible if travel is just when you go to other countries or travel to other parts of the world. But there's so much to explore than in your own neighborhood. Even that is possible if budget is an issue.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, and I also think a great place to close off our conversation for today. So, Aneeqa, thank you so much for all of your insights and for making us all feel like we were there with you on all of your tours. It was so lovely to have you on the podcast today.
It was wonderful being here, and I hope it helps somebody to travel. And I hope that listening to this conversation kind of motivates somebody to travel. So I think the purpose would be served if that happens.